I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who checks her husband's phone. That was something desperate housewives did in movies, not Emily Parker from Oakwood Drive with her sensible shoes and her corner office. But there I was at 2:17 a.m., heart pounding as I punched in David's passcode, our anniversary date, of all the cliches, while he snored beside me. The text messages illuminated my face in the darkness. I'd noticed the changes. Late nights at the office, sudden business trips, the cologne he never wore for me. His excuses had piled up like autumn leaves, but I'd swept them away, telling myself that 15 years of marriage couldn't be threatened by something as mundane as midlife restlessness. "Miss you already," read the latest message from someone named Greg from Finance. I almost laughed. Greg from Finance was clearly Grace, and David hadn't even bothered with an original cover. I scrolled up, each message a knife twisting deeper. Plans made while I worked late. Inside jokes about my schedule. Photos I couldn't bring myself to open. I set the phone down gently, as if the wrong move might shatter what remained of my world. The ceiling fan spun lazily above us, churning the humid July air but providing no relief. David shifted in his sleep, his arm reaching for me out of habit. I slipped away from his touch. Downstairs in our kitchen, the one we'd renovated together last spring, arguing over granite versus quartz like it was the most important decision in the world. I poured myself a glass of the expensive bourbon he saved for special occasions. The liquor burned, but I welcomed the pain. It was the first real thing I'd felt in weeks. The house we'd built together suddenly felt like a museum of lies. The wedding photo on the mantel, the dent in the wall from when we'd attempted to carry in our first couch, the fertility calendar hidden in my desk drawer, marking the days I'd believed we were trying to create a family. How long had he been living this double life? How much of us was real? Morning came with brutal clarity. I watched David's routine with new eyes. The precise way he knotted his tie, the careful application of that cologne, the lingering check of his reflection. He kissed me goodbye, his lips brushing my cheek with practiced tenderness. "I'll be late tonight," he said, adjusting his cufflinks, the silver ones I'd given him for our 10th anniversary. "Big client meeting?" I nodded, my smile fixed in place. "Good luck," I replied, the words tasting like ash. "I'll be waiting up." He hesitated at the door, and for a moment, I thought he might confess. Instead, he smiled, that crooked smile that had made me fall in love with him at 23, and walked out. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. My assistant sounded concerned, but I assured her it was just a migraine. The lie came easily. Perhaps I'd learned from the best. I spent the morning in a daze, moving from room to room in our house, seeing evidence of betrayal in every corner. In his home office, I found receipts for dinners at restaurants too expensive for client meetings. In his closet, a shirt with a lipstick stain I'd initially attributed to my own carelessness. The evidence had been there all along, hiding in plain sight while I'd been too busy, too trusting, too in love to see it. By afternoon, my shock had hardened into something colder. I sat at our dining table with a legal pad, methodically listing dates, inconsistencies, financial discrepancies. If my heart was breaking, my mind refused to acknowledge it. Instead, I channeled my pain into precision, building a case as if I were preparing for the most important trial of my career. When my phone rang, I knew it would be him before I checked the caller ID. "Hey." David's voice was casual, confident. "Just checking in. How's your day?" I thought of all the ways I could answer. I could scream. I could cry. I could recite his text messages back to him verbatim. Instead, I matched his tone. "Just fine," I replied, surprising myself with my steadiness. "Actually, I'm planning something special for tonight." "Oh?" Interest and perhaps a touch of panic. "I told you I'd be late." "I know what you told me," I cut in smoothly. "But I think you'll want to be home for this." 7 o'clock, David. Don't be late." I hung up before he could respond, before my voice could betray me. The sun slanted through our west-facing windows, painting golden rectangles on the hardwood floor. I had 5 hours to decide exactly what kind of woman I would be by nightfall. The kind who forgives, the kind who forgets, or the kind who makes sure he regrets the day he ever took me for granted. Time crawled as I prepared for David's arrival. I didn't bother with dinner. Food was the furthest thing from my mind. Instead, I poured 2 glasses of the Bordeaux we'd been saving for our anniversary next month. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd planned to celebrate 16 years of marriage with the man who couldn't even remain faithful for 15. The house fell into shadow as the sun set, but I didn't turn on the lights. Let him find me in darkness. Let him feel, for just a moment, what it was like to enter an unfamiliar space that should have been safe and welcoming. At 7:06, headlights swept across the living room wall. Car door, footsteps on the porch, keys jingling. I sat perfectly still at the dining table, his phone placed precisely in the center beside the wine glasses. I'd returned it to our bedroom after my discovery, but retrieved it again as part of tonight's scene setting. Evidence Exhibit A. "Em," David called, flipping on the entryway light. "Why is it so dark in here?" "In here," I answered, my voice steadier than I felt. He appeared in the doorway, briefcase in hand, confusion etched across his features. His eyes darted from me to the phone on the table, and in that split second, I saw recognition dawn. Not guilt, not yet, but the first flicker of understanding that something had shifted. "What's going on?" he asked, setting down his briefcase. "Always careful with his possessions, my David." "Sit," I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. "Have some wine. It's a special occasion after all." He hesitated, then complied. "Emily, if this is about me working late—" "It's not about you working late," I interrupted, sliding his phone toward him. "It's about you lying about working late. It's about Greg from finance, who I'm guessing doesn't exist. It's about Grace, whose name you couldn't even bother to disguise well." The color drained from his face. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He reached for the wine, took a long swallow. "How long?" I asked. He studied the glass in his hand. 6 months. The answer hit me like a physical blow. 6 months. Half a year of deception while I'd been planning our future, trying for a baby, renovating our home. I'd been building while he'd been destroying. Who is she? Does it matter? It matters to me. My voice cracked for the first time. I want to know what was worth throwing away 15 years of marriage. David sighed, running a hand through his hair. A gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. "She's new at the firm, junior associate. It just happened." "Nothing just happens, David. You made choices. Every text, every lie, every time you touched her. Those were all choices. Choices that excluded me. Choices that disrespected everything we built. I never meant to hurt you," he said, the most predictable line in the adulterer's handbook. A harsh laugh escaped me. "Yet here we are, with me hurt and you caught. What exactly did you mean to do? Keep us both indefinitely? Compartmentalize your life until retirement?" He had no answer for that. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked, the sound echoing in the tense silence between us. "I need to know everything," I said finally. "Not the intimate details. I don't need those images in my head. But the logistics. Where you went. How you hid it. Whether anyone else knows. I need to understand the architecture of your betrayal. Emily, you owe me this, David. You owe me the truth, at the very least." So he told me. About the business trips that weren't entirely for business. About the nights he'd claimed to be working late when he was at her apartment. About the separate credit card he'd opened to hide the evidence. With each revelation, my mental timeline adjusted, memories recontextualized. That weekend he'd been at a conference was when I'd miscarried our first pregnancy attempt. The night he'd fallen asleep at the office was our anniversary. I listened without interrupting, without crying. My tears would come later, in private. This moment required clarity, not emotion. When he finished, he reached for my hand across the table. I pulled back. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. The question hung between us like smoke. What indeed? In the movies, this would be the moment for dramatic gestures. Throwing rings, smashing plates, ultimatums delivered through tears. But real heartbreak is quieter, more deliberate. "Now," I said, rising from my chair, "you pack a bag and leave. I need space to think, and I can't do that with you here. This is my house too," he protested weakly. "Yes, it is. And you're welcome to contest me on this. if that's the kind of fight you want to have tonight. But I think you've done enough damage for one day, don't you?" His shoulders slumped in defeat. He knew I was right. More importantly, he knew he'd surrendered any moral high ground the moment he'd started his affair. "Where should I go?" he asked, suddenly looking lost in the home we'd shared for over a decade. "That's not my problem anymore." I turned away, unable to watch his face crumple. Despite everything, some small, traitorous part of me still loved him enough to hurt when he hurt. I'd suggest a hotel, but I'm sure Grace has a couch you could use. He flinched at the bar but said nothing. I listened to his footsteps as he climbed the stairs to our bedroom, drawers opening and closing, the zip of a suitcase, the mundane sounds of a marriage ending. 20 minutes later, he stood at the front door, bag in hand. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice thick. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "I'll call you tomorrow," he added. "When things are calmer." "Don't," I said quietly. "I'll contact you when I'm ready." After he left, I locked the door and leaned against it, finally allowing my legs to give way. I slid to the floor, the house echoing with a silence I hadn't experienced in 15 years. For the first time since morning, I let the tears come, hot and relentless. I cried for the woman who had woken up secure in her marriage just 24 hours ago. I cried for the children we'd tried and failed to conceive. I cried for the future that had evaporated like morning mist. But even as I wept, a small, steely voice inside whispered that this pain wouldn't destroy me. I would survive this. I would rebuild. And I would never again mistake blind trust for love. 3 days passed without contact. David called repeatedly that first night, then switched to texts when I didn't answer, each message more desperate than the last. "Please talk to me. I made a terrible mistake. We can fix this. I love you, Emily." I read each one, but offered no response. What was there to say? His words were just air. Empty promises from a man who'd proven his promises meant nothing. On the 4th morning, I called my office and requested 2 weeks of emergency leave. My boss, Janet, didn't ask questions. The benefit of 15 years of dedicated service and never taking personal time. Next, I called my sister Claire in Boston. "He did what?" Her voice rose with each word. "That absolute bastard. I'm getting on the next flight." "Don't," I said, surprising myself. "I need to handle this alone. No one should go through this alone, Em. I'm not alone. I have you on the phone. I have my friends. But I need to be physically alone to figure out what I want." Reluctantly, she agreed, but only after making me promise to call her daily. "And if you change your mind, I'm one text away from booking that ticket." The rest of the day passed in a blur of practical tasks. I changed the locks, not out of fear, but because I needed a tangible barrier between my old life and whatever came next. I made an appointment with a lawyer, not committing to divorce, but wanting to understand my options. I contacted our bank and froze the joint accounts, another boundary I needed while I processed. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Emily, this is Grace. Can we talk?" My stomach lurched. The audacity stunned me. What could she possibly have to say that I would want to hear? I blocked the number without responding, then threw my phone across the room onto the couch. It bounced harmlessly, which was disappointing. Some small childish part of me wanted the satisfaction of destruction. That night, sleep eluded me. I paced my bedroom, studying the space with new eyes. The king-sized bed suddenly seemed enormous for one person. The framed photos on the dresser mocked me with frozen moments of happiness that now felt fraudulent. In a burst of energy, I stripped the bed, stuffing the sheets and duvet into garbage bags. I couldn't bear to sleep another night surrounded by his scent, by the possibility that she had been in this very bed. The thought hit me with such force that I sank to the floor. Had he brought her here, to our home? Was nothing sacred? I hadn't thought to ask during our confrontation, too overwhelmed by the basic fact of betrayal to probe its every dimension. By morning, I'd moved all of David's remaining belongings into the spare room and rearranged the bedroom furniture. Small changes, but they helped. This space was mine now. A week passed. I established a new routine. Morning run, work emails from home to stay connected, Afternoon consultations with the lawyer or therapist I'd finally decided to see. Evenings with books I'd been meaning to read for years. I fielded concerned calls from friends, giving them the bare minimum of information. David and I are taking some time apart. Yes, I'm okay. No, I don't need anything. The lies came easily. Perhaps I'd learned from him after all. On day 9, the doorbell rang. I peered through the peephole to find David standing on the porch, shoulders hunched against the autumn chill. He held a small bouquet of my favorite flowers, peonies, out of season and doubtlessly expensive. I considered not answering, but ignoring him wouldn't make him disappear, and I needed to face this eventually. I opened the door, but blocked the entrance with my body. "Emily," he breathed, as if my name was both prayer and answer. "You look—" "Don't," I cut him off. "What do you want?" He held out the flowers. I made no move to take them. "I want to come home," he said simply. I ended things with grace. It was a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. I love you. I've always loved you. A week ago, those words might have weakened my resolve. Now, they rang hollow. "Love doesn't behave the way you did," I said quietly. "Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't betray. People make mistakes." His voice took on an edge of desperation. "Even good people. Even people who love each other. We can work through this. Couples therapy. A fresh start. Whatever you need." "What I need," I replied, "is time and space. I'm not making any decisions today about our future. If we even have one." His face fell, but he nodded. "Can I at least come in, just to talk?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. Some conversations shouldn't happen on porches, visible to curious neighbors. He entered cautiously, as if afraid I might change my mind. The house must have looked different to him. Evidence of my changes everywhere. His favorite armchair moved to make room for my new reading nook. His sports memorabilia boxed up and replaced with my artwork. The space claimed in his absence. We sat in the living room, an awkward distance between us. For 15 years, we'd navigated each other's physical space with the easy intimacy of long-term partners. Now, we were strangers calculating safe distances. "I've been staying at the Marriott downtown," he offered, living out of a suitcase. "It's been clarifying." "I imagine it has." "Emily, please." His voice cracked. "Tell me what I can do to fix this." The question hung between us, sincere but fundamentally flawed. As if betrayal was a broken appliance that could be repaired with the right tools and enough determination. "I don't know if this can be fixed," I admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I see you with her. Every memory we've shared is contaminated. 6 months, David. Half a year of lies while I was still planning our future." "I know." He looked down at his hands. "I don't have excuses, just regret, and the certainty that losing you would be the worst thing that ever happened to me. You should have considered that possibility before you started sleeping with your colleague." He flinched but didn't argue. We sat in silence for a long moment, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall marking time between us. "The lawyer thinks we should consider a trial separation," I said finally. "Legally documented. 6 months. Separation?" His face paled. "That's one step from divorce." "Yes, it is. Is that what you want? To end our marriage?" I met his gaze directly. "What I want is irrelevant. You've already ended our marriage as it was. The question now is whether we build something new or walk away entirely." He nodded slowly, accepting this hard truth. "And the separation would give us time to decide?" "It would give me time," I corrected gently. "You've had your time to make choices. Now it's my turn." When he left an hour later, the flowers remained on the coffee table. Beautiful, but unwanted. Like his apologies, like his promises, they would wither soon enough. I watched from the window as he walked to his car, shoulders slumped in defeat. For the first time since discovering his betrayal, I felt something other than pain or anger. A quiet certainty that whatever happened next, I would be all right. Changed, perhaps. Scarred, definitely. But standing, breathing, moving forward. That night, I slept dreamlessly for the first time in weeks. Weeks bled into months. Autumn faded into winter, and the separation papers sat signed on my lawyer's desk. The holidays loomed ahead like a minefield of memories. Thanksgiving at his parents' house in Connecticut, Christmas morning mimosas by our fireplace, New Year's Eve at the Hendersons' annual party. Traditions built over 15 years, now fractured beyond recognition. You could come to Boston, Claire offered during our weekly call. Adam's family would love to have you. The thought of being a charity case at my sister's in-laws' table made my skin crawl. Thanks, but I think I'll stay here. Alone? On Thanksgiving? I won't be alone, I lied. Sarah from work invited me over. The truth was, I craved solitude. In the quiet of empty rooms, I was slowly rediscovering the woman I'd been before David. Ambitious, independent, uncompromising. She'd been buried beneath years of compromise and shared dreams. But she was emerging now, blinking in the harsh light of my new reality. The weekend before Thanksgiving, I finally tackled the spare room where I'd stashed David's remaining belongings. His winter clothes still hung in garment bags. Books he'd meant to read piled on the nightstand. Cufflinks and watches nestled in their leather cases. The physical inventory of a man's life, waiting in suspended animation. I called him as I sorted items into boxes. "I need you to pick up your things," I said when he answered, my voice businesslike. "I'm clearing out the spare room." Silence on the line then. "Does this mean you've made a decision?" I closed my eyes, leaning against the doorframe. Had I? 3 months of separation had brought clarity, if not certainty. The pain had dulled from acute to chronic, from emergency to inconvenience. I'd learned to sleep alone again, to cook for one, to fill my weekends with activities that required no compromise. But deciding to end a marriage required more than just adapting to absence. "No," I answered honestly, "but I need my space back." He arrived the next day, nervous energy radiating from him as he loaded boxes into his car. He looked different, thinner, with shadows under his eyes that matched my own. He'd grown a beard, something I'd always vetoed during our marriage. The sight of it, this visible evidence of his life continuing without my input, struck me harder than I'd expected. "You look good," he offered as he carried the last box down the stairs. "Different, but good." I smiled tightly. "Thanks. How's work?" "Busy. I'm up for partner." His eyebrows rose. "Emily, that's fantastic. You've wanted that for years." "Yes. The achievement that once would have been ours to celebrate now belonged to me alone." Another adjustment in the ledger of separation. As he prepared to leave, he hesitated by the door. "I miss you," he said quietly. "Every day." Once, those words would have weakened me. Now they simply existed, a fact neither welcome nor unwelcome. "I know," I replied, not offering reciprocation. After he left, I wandered through the house, a strange lightness filling me. For the first time, the space felt truly mine. I opened a bottle of wine and spent the evening rearranging furniture, erasing the last physical reminders of our shared aesthetic. By midnight, I'd transformed the spare room into a home office, something I'd always wanted but never prioritized in our negotiations over space. The next morning, I woke early and did something I'd been avoiding for months. I visited our old fertility clinic. The waiting room was painfully familiar. The same outdated magazines, the same soothing pastel walls, the same hushed conversations between couples clutching hands, and hope. I sat alone, my wedding ring conspicuously absent. "Dr. Reynolds looked surprised to see me. "Emily, it's been a while." 8 months, I confirmed. "I've had some life changes." Her eyes flickered to my bare ring finger, understanding dawning. "I see. How can I help you today?" I took a deep breath. I want to discuss my options. As a single woman. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. By speaking them aloud, I'd crossed a threshold. This wasn't about saving my marriage anymore. This was about saving myself. "You're only 38, she said carefully. "Still well within range for success, especially given your previous hormone panels. We'd need to run new tests, of course." I nodded, a strange calm settling over me. For years, having a baby had been our dream, a shared goal that kept us pushing through disappointments. Now, I was reclaiming it as my own ambition, separate from David and his betrayal. That evening, my phone lit up with a text from David. "Had dinner at Antonio's tonight. Remember our first date there? The waiter still asks about you." I stared at the message, recognizing it for what it was, an attempt to pull me back into our shared history, to remind me of what we'd been before everything shattered. 6 months ago, I might have responded with my own memory, might have used it as a lifeline back to safer emotional ground. Instead, I set the phone aside without replying, and returned to the proposal I was drafting for work. The past was a beautiful country, but I couldn't live there anymore. My future, uncertain as it was, waited ahead, and for the first time since finding those text messages, I felt genuinely curious about what it might hold. January arrived with brutal cold, and the news I'd been working toward for 5 years. I made partner. The firm celebrated with champagne and congratulations, my colleagues tactfully avoiding mentions of David, who had attended every office function at my side since we'd met. Janet, my boss and mentor, pulled me aside during the celebration. "I'm proud of you," she said, clinking her glass against mine. "Not just for making partner, but for how you've handled everything this year." I blinked, surprised. We'd never discussed my separation explicitly. I didn't realize people knew. She smiled kindly. "Small firm, Emily. People notice when you stop wearing your ring and your husband stops showing up at events." She squeezed my arm. "But you never let it affect your work. That's rare." Work had been my sanctuary, the one part of my life untouched by betrayal. I'd thrown myself into cases with a focus that bordered on obsession, staying late at the office not because I was avoiding an empty house, but because success was the one thing I could still control. 2 days after the promotion, I was leaving a client lunch when I saw her. Grace. She stood outside a boutique across the street, adjusting shopping bags as she checked her phone. I froze mid-step, causing a businessman behind me to bump into my back with a muttered apology. For months, she'd existed only as an abstract concept. The other woman, a faceless threat to my security. Now here she was, beautiful in the cold sunlight, casual in her destruction of my life. Before I could think better of it, I crossed the street. "Grace?" My voice was steadier than I felt. She looked up, confusion crossing her features before recognition dawned. Her complexion paled beneath her makeup. "Emily." "Yes." I stood there, suddenly unsure what to say now that I had her attention. What does one say to the woman who slept with your husband? Miss Manners offered no guidance for this particular social scenario. She glanced around nervously, as if looking for escape routes. "I didn't expect to see you here." Likewise, I studied her. This woman who had seen my husband naked, who had heard his secrets, who had believed herself important enough to justify our destruction. She was younger than me, mid-20s perhaps, with the polished look of someone who spent considerable time on her appearance. Pretty, but not extraordinarily so. Nothing about her explained why David had risked everything. "I should go," she said, shifting uncomfortably under my scrutiny. "Did you love him?" The question escaped before I could stop it. Her eyes widened. "Emily, I don't think... It's a simple question. Did you love my husband, or was he just... convenient?" She flinched at the word husband, as if I'd slapped her. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like? Help me understand." A couple walked past us, glancing curiously at our tense tableau. Grace lowered her voice. "Can we go somewhere and talk? Please?" 20 minutes later, we sat in a quiet corner of a nearby coffee shop, steam rising from untouched cups between us. The absurdity of the situation wasn't lost on me. Here I was, having coffee with the woman who had helped dismantle my marriage, as if we were potential friends catching up. "He told me you were separated," she began, staring into her latte. "When we first got involved." I nodded, unsurprised. The classic lie of unfaithful spouses everywhere. By the time I realized that wasn't true, things were already... She trailed off, her cheeks flushing. "Complicated?" I supplied, my tone sharper than intended. "Yes." She met my eyes directly for the first time. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Emily. What I did was wrong, regardless of what David told me. But I want you to know it's over. Has been since that night you confronted him. Does that make it better?" I asked quietly. "That you stopped sleeping with my husband after he got caught?" She flinched again. "No, nothing makes it better. I just thought you should know." We sat in uncomfortable silence. Outside, snow began to fall, delicate flakes spiraling past the window. In some alternate universe, I might have hated this woman, might have screamed at her in this coffee shop or plotted elaborate revenge. But sitting across from her, all I felt was a profound weariness. She wasn't a monster. She was just young and foolish and human, like David, like me. "He's not a bad person," she said eventually, as if reading my thoughts. "He made a terrible mistake, but he loves you. He talked about you all the time." A hollow laugh escaped me. "How romantic for you." She had the grace to look embarrassed. I deserved that. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, genuinely curious. "What do you gain from defending him to me?" Grace wrapped her hands around her mug, seeming to gather courage. "Because I've been where you are. My fiancé cheated on me 2 years ago with my roommate. I found them together. In my bed. The revelation hung between us, recontextualizing everything. And you still chose to become the other woman in someone else's marriage?" "I know how it sounds," she said quietly. "I told myself it was different because David said you were already separated. But really, I was just broken, distrustful, wanting to take some power back after feeling so powerless." She looked up, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm not asking you to understand or forgive. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, truly sorry." I sat back, studying her. There was no guidebook for this moment, no precedent in my experience for how to respond to a sincere apology from the woman who'd slept with my husband. In movies, this would be a cathartic confrontation, ending in screaming or slapped faces. But real life rarely provided such clean resolutions. "Thank you for your honesty," I said finally, reaching for my coat. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Grace. But I don't think it was ever David." Outside, the snow was falling harder, coating the sidewalks in pristine white. I turned my face upward, letting cold flakes land on my skin. The encounter had left me feeling strangely empty, neither vindicated nor further wounded. Grace was just a symptom, not the disease. The real betrayal had always been David's choice, not her existence. As I walked back to my office, my phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. David's attorney reached out. He wants to discuss reconciliation options before proceeding with divorce filings. Thoughts? I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, pedestrians flowing around me like a stream around a stone. 6 months of separation had passed. The deadline for decision had arrived, and with it, the moment I'd been simultaneously dreading and awaiting, the point of no return. I sat in Dr. Winter's office, the same place I'd been coming every Wednesday at 4 o'clock for the past 5 months. The therapist watched me with practiced patience as I processed my encounter with Grace. "And how did that make you feel?" she asked, the quintessential therapist question that once would have made me roll my eyes. "That's the strange part," I replied, tracing the pattern on the armchair with my finger. "I didn't feel much of anything. No rage, no vindication, just recognition, I guess. She's just another person who made bad choices." Dr. Winters nodded. "That sounds like progress, Emily. When you first came here, you described feeling consumed by anger. I was. The memory of those early days after discovery still had the power to make my chest tighten. The sleepless nights, the constant replay of imagined scenarios, the physical pain of betrayal that manifested as actual heartache. But now I'm just tired of letting their choices define my life. And David wants to discuss reconciliation." I sighed, leaning back in the chair. "Yes. His lawyer contacted mine yesterday. The 6-month separation is almost up, and legally, we need to decide whether to proceed with divorce or attempt to rebuild. What are you thinking?" The million-dollar question. What was I thinking? For months, I'd avoided making this decision, focusing instead on rebuilding my identity separate from my marriage. I'd redecorated the house, secured my partnership, even started preliminary fertility consultations. I'd created a life that could continue without David in it. But was that what I wanted? "I still love him," I admitted quietly. "After everything, some part of me still loves the man I built a life with for 15 years. But I don't know if I can ever trust him again. And without trust, there is no foundation." Dr. Winters finished for me. "But trust can be rebuilt. with time and consistent effort from both parties. Is it worth it, though? Starting from scratch when I've already begun building something new on my own? She smiled gently. That's not something I can answer for you, Emily. Of course not. The most expensive hourly rate in the city, and still, the hardest questions remained mine alone to answer. That evening, I called David and asked him to meet me at the house. If we were going to have this conversation, it should be in the space we'd once shared, not in some sterile lawyer's office surrounded by divorce paperwork. He arrived promptly at 7, a bottle of wine in hand, the same Bordeaux we'd opened the night I confronted him. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," he said as I led him into the living room. He glanced around, taking in the changes. New furniture, rearranged art, physical manifestations of my emotional evolution. "The house looks different." "So do we," I replied, settling into my chair. The one I'd bought after he left, sized perfectly for one person. He sat across from me, the coffee table between us like neutral territory. "Emily, before we start discussing legal options, I want you to know that I've been working on myself these past 6 months. Therapy, twice a week. A support group for people who've made the mistakes I have." He leaned forward, eyes earnest. "I understand now why I did what I did. The insecurities, the fear of aging, the need for validation. None of it excuses my actions, but understanding the why helps me ensure I never make those choices again." I nodded, acknowledging his effort without offering absolution. "I'm glad therapy has been helpful." "It has." He hesitated. "I saw Grace last month, by accident, at a conference in Chicago." My breath caught. And nothing. I said hello. We exchanged awkward small talk about the weather, and went our separate ways. He met my gaze directly. "There's nothing there, Emily. There never really was. She was a symptom of my own problems, not a solution to them." I almost laughed at the echo of my own thoughts after meeting Grace. Perhaps we'd both reached similar conclusions, traveling different paths. "I ran into her too," I admitted. "We had coffee." His eyes widened. "You what?" "Don't worry, no blood was shed. It was actually clarifying." "In what way?" I considered the question carefully. It helped me see that this isn't about her. It never was. It's about us, what we had, what we lost, and what we might still be able to salvage. I took a deep breath. "If we want to." Hope flickered across his face, quickly tempered by caution. "Do you want to salvage it?" The question hung between us, heavy with potential. 6 months ago, I couldn't have answered it objectively, too blinded by pain and betrayal. But time had provided perspective, and therapy had given me tools to separate emotion from pragmatism. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Part of me wants to try. We built something good, David. 15 years of memories and inside jokes and shared dreams. That's not nothing. But," he prompted gently, "but another part of me has discovered something unexpected in your absence. Independence. I've built a life that works without you in it. I made partner. I'm considering having a child on my own. I've created new routines, new dreams." I leaned forward, meeting his gaze. "And I'm afraid that if we try again, I'll lose myself in us, just like before." He nodded slowly, absorbing my words. "I understand that fear. I do. But what if we built something different this time? Something that honors who you've become, who I'm trying to be. How would that work exactly?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I'd like the chance to figure it out together. Not picking up where we left off, but starting something new. With boundaries. With respect. With honesty." I studied him. This man I'd loved for half my adult life. This man who had broken my heart and upended my world. He looked different now. Humbled by consequence. Tempered by regret. But was it enough? "I need more time," I said finally. "The legal deadline is arbitrary. My heart doesn't operate on a 6-month timeline." Disappointment flashed across his face, but he nodded. "Of course. Whatever you need." "What I need," I said carefully, "is a different kind of trial period. Not separation, but not full reconciliation either. I want us to date, David. Start from the beginning. Get to know the people we've become." "Date?" He looked bemused. "Like dinner and movies? Like building a relationship intentionally, instead of falling back into old patterns. If we're going to try again, I want it to be with open eyes and clear boundaries. I won't be rushed, and I won't be taken for granted. He considered this, then nodded slowly. I'd like that, very much. And I need your word, your absolute promise, that you'll respect my process, however long it takes. If you can't give me that, we should just sign the divorce papers now. You have my word, he said, his voice steady. However long it takes. We talked for hours that night, outlining what this new arrangement might look like. Scheduled dates, separate residences for now, couples therapy alongside our individual sessions, clear communication about expectations and boundaries. By the time he left, sometime after midnight, we had a framework, not a guarantee, but a possibility. Standing in the doorway, he hesitated, clearly unsure whether to hug me, shake my hand, or simply walk away. I made the decision for him, stepping forward to place a brief kiss on his cheek. Good night, David. Good night, Emily. He smiled, tentative but genuine. May I call you tomorrow? I nodded. You may. After he left, I walked through the house, turning off lights, straightening cushions, falling into the solitary routines I'd developed in his absence. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time in months, uncertainty felt less like an abyss and more like an open door. Whether David and I found our way back to each other or ultimately parted for good, I knew now that I would be okay either way. The woman I'd become in the aftermath of betrayal was stronger than the woman who had stumbled upon those text messages. She knew her worth, she knew her boundaries, and most importantly, she knew that love, real love, should never require the sacrifice of self.